HR Link is in Milan today for the conference HR Technologies Frontiers. Our partner is HR Business International. We have the privilege of speaking with Mrs. Liggy Webb, who is the best-selling author of Resilience, How to Cope When Everything is Changing, and she's an international consultant specializing in behavioral skills. First of all, thank you very much for giving us this interview, and thank you for your time.
Thank you.
I would like to ask you some important questions about resilience. Your latest book is Resilience, How to Cope When Everything is Changing. Please define for me in this context, what do you mean by resilience?
Okay, this is very much about personal resilience. You know, clearly we're living in a world that's very challenging. There's a lot of volatility, there's a lot of uncertainty, quite a lot of complexity, a lot of ambiguity. And the need for people to be able to be stronger, to be able to get through some of those challenging times in the best possible way that they can is really key. You know, the word resilience actually comes from the Latin word resilio, which means to jump back. So it is very much about our ability to be able to see life's challenges as stepping stones as opposed to stumbling blocks.
Very well, thank you. You have defined 10 strategies. Tell me about them.
Yeah, that's right. When I researched the book, I kind of went out into the world. I identified people from lots of different backgrounds in lots of different organizations who'd had all sorts of challenging situations. You know, invariably, we're all going to experience perhaps illness, job loss, relationship breakdowns, and a lot of uncertainty and change. So it was really about identifying what are the core behaviors that enable people to be able to cope with some of these difficulties. I also conducted quite a lot of research with different areas that had been looking at research. There's a lot of universities around the world that have identified some really good information, some good data, particularly around the areas of neuroscience and how our minds work. I'm very interested as well in this whole area of mental health. You know, by 2020, the World Health Organization has identified that depression will be the second biggest global form of illness worldwide. So clearly there is a need to be able to help and support people to be able to cope with some of these challenges.
Okay. During your speech, excuse me if I introduce another questions, but it was very interesting, the concept of VUCA.
Yes.
Could you explain for us this concept?
Okay, the term VUCA actually comes from US military vocabulary, and it talks about how we live in a volatile, uncertain, complex and ambiguous world, which I'm sure a lot of us can relate to. And there is someone called Bob Johansen who works for the Institute of Future in America, and he has formulated an alternative, a more positive model around VUCA, which looks at a world that has vision, it has understanding, it has a lot more clarity and agility, because agility is an area as well that's very important. As much with resilience, our ability to be able to get through challenges, we've also got to be more agile. We've got to be able to respond and adapt, but also we need to be able to do that quicker. You know, we're living in a world where everything is about speed. There is a lot more demand. The consumer, profile is changing. So people want things to be quicker. We also have quite a lot of choice. So it's about how we distill some of that complexity so that we can make better decisions and we can be stronger in terms of how we manage our lives in general.
Thank you. One last question, Mrs. Lee. How could an organization help employees to cope with changing stress?
I think stress is the number one reason for sickness absenteeism, and sickness absenteeism to our working economy is huge. So I think a lot of organisations are seeing the benefit. They're seeing that there is a very solid business case in being able to invest in well-being programmes, so really looking after the physical and the emotional health of their people. So I think a really robust well-being programme that incorporates strategies to be able to manage stress, but also to teach people to be more resilient, because I do really believe that resilience can be learned, and I think there are some very interesting guiding principles that people can find out more about, and that way they can hone, if you like, their coping mechanisms, particularly in a world where there is such relentless change.
How can we learn resilience?
I think resilience is very much about having a growth mindset. You know, we're all people in progress, we all have potential. And I think it's about keeping an open mind and being able to learn about the different strategies. And a lot around resilience is about taking personal responsibility, it's about emotional intelligence, and very much about positive psychology. So having a positive mindset and being able to embrace change in the most positive way that you can is something that we can really help to teach, and also to support our people to be able to take on board some of those strategies and coping mechanisms.
Okay, very well. Thank you once again, Mrs. Webb, and it's been a pleasure to meet you.
Thank you very much. Thank you.
Thank you.